The elevator kept rising, one floor at a time, each chime through the shaft louder than my own heartbeat. Gabriel broke the one rule that mattered. The elevator kept rising, one floor at a time, each chime through the shaft louder than my own heartbeat. Gabriel didn't wait to see who stepped out. He had me moving before I'd even processed the darkness. Through the kitchen, behind the pantry wall, into a space I hadn't known existed, until his hand pressed flat against a panel, and it slid open like it had been waiting for exactly this moment.
Panic room. Built it myself the second week I was here. Don't argue, just move.
I didn't argue. Inside, the space was small. Steel walls, a bank of monitors, enough air and supplies for days. Gabriel pulled the door shut behind us with a soft, final click. And for a moment, we just stood there, breathing in the dark, his hand still wrapped around my wrist, like he hadn't decided yet whether to let go. On the monitor, grainy footage showed the elevator doors opening. Not an army, not even a stranger, just a single courier in a delivery uniform, setting a plain envelope on the floor of the empty penthouse and leaving as quickly as he'd come.
That's not how a threat delivers something. That's how someone makes sure you know they can reach you anytime they want.
We waited 20 full minutes before Gabriel would let us leave the panic room to retrieve it. Inside the envelope was a single photograph. Daniel, older than the boy in my memory, standing outside a small house somewhere with mountains behind him, clearly taken without his knowledge. On the back, 4 words in handwriting I didn't recognize. "You're running out of time." "Someone's been watching him too," I whispered. "This whole time."
Which means whoever sent this wants us to find him before they do. Or wants us to think that. His jaw tightened. Either way, we're not staying here another hour.
We left the penthouse before sunrise, Gabriel driving a car I'd never seen before, plates that didn't match anything registered to my father's company. 3 hours later, we arrived at a safe house on the edge of the city. Smaller, older, nothing like the sterile luxury of the penthouse. It felt, strangely, more like somewhere a person could actually live. Gabriel spent that first day making calls I wasn't allowed to hear, piecing together fragments of a trail that led, slowly, toward a name I never expected.
Marcus Reyes.
I actually laughed, short, disbelieving. "Uncle Marcus?" "Gabriel. He's been at every birthday I've ever had. He walked me down the aisle rehearsal for a wedding that never happened." "He's not."
I know how it sounds. I need you to look at this before you decide I'm wrong.
He spread documents across the table. Shell companies, wire transfers spanning over a decade, all tracing back through layers designed to be impossible to follow unless you already knew what you were looking for. At the center of nearly every transaction, Marcus Reyes. "He's been quietly bleeding your father's company for years," Gabriel said, small enough not to trigger alarms individually, but added up, and it's tens of millions. And 12 years ago, right around the time your brother turned 18 and started asking real questions about the business he was set to inherit, Daniel disappeared.
Daniel disappeared.
The room tilted the way it had the night Gabriel first said my brother's name. Marcus wasn't a stranger circling our lives from the outside. He'd been inside them the entire time, close enough to know exactly where to cut, so no one would ever suspect the hand holding the knife. I called my father that night, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone twice before he picked up. "Dad, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you ever suspect Marcus?" The silence on the line was answer enough before he even spoke. "I had no proof," he said finally, his voice older than I'd ever heard it. "Every time I got close to a reason, evidence disappeared. I told myself I was being paranoid, that a man who'd known me since college, who I trusted with my children, could not be capable of—" He stopped. "I failed your brother. I've spent 12 years failing him a little more every single day I didn't push harder. Then help me fix it now."
By morning, we had a location. A property registered under one of Marcus's shell companies. 3 hours north. Exactly the kind of place a person disappears to when someone needs them to stay disappeared.
Before we left, Gabriel found me standing at the window, watching the sun come up over a city that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else's life.
You don't have to come. I can bring him back to you.
"He's my brother. I've spent 12 years grieving a lie. I'm not staying behind for the truth." Gabriel studied me for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Not the careful control I'd first met, and not quite the walls he'd tried to rebuild after the storm. Just a man, finally letting himself be seen.
Then we do this together, all the way through.
Together, I repeated, and something about saying it out loud made it feel less like a plan and more like a promise. The drive north was quiet, the kind of quiet that carries more than conversation ever could. Somewhere past the second hour, my hand found his on the seat between us, and he didn't pull away, just laced his fingers through mine, like he'd been waiting the entire drive for permission he hadn't known how to ask for.
12 years, I told myself I didn't get to want anything for myself. Not after what happened to Daniel. Wanting things felt like a betrayal of a debt I could never finish paying.
And now?
Now I think the debt was never going to be paid by punishing myself forever. Only by finishing what I started. Protecting the people I couldn't protect before. He glanced at me, quick, almost shy in a way that didn't match anything else about him. Protecting you, not because it's a job anymore.
Say it, I said softly. Whatever you keep almost saying.
He pulled the car onto the shoulder of an empty road, put it in park, and turned to face me fully for the first time since we'd left the city. I love you, Sophia. I've spent every night since that storm telling myself it was reckless, unprofessional, dangerous for both of us. It didn't make it less true.
I didn't answer with words. I closed the distance between us myself this time, and when his hand rose to my jaw exactly like it had that night, he didn't pull away. The kiss was slow, certain, everything the storm had almost given us, and finally did. I love you too, I whispered against him. I think I have since the first night you told me you slept outside doors instead of in them.
A real laugh, low and surprised out of him. Rule number 1, broken beyond repair.
Good, I said. I never liked that rule anyway. We reached the property an hour before sunset. A modest house at the end of a long gravel drive, mountains rising behind it, exactly like the photograph. Gabriel moved with the same lethal precision I remembered from the night the window shattered, sweeping the perimeter before letting me approach the door. It opened before we reached it. The man standing there was older than the boy in my memory, taller, a stranger's face built on the bones of someone I used to know, and yet the second our eyes met, 12 years collapsed into nothing at all. Daniel. Soph. His voice broke on the single syllable. You're not supposed to be here. It's not safe. You have to... I don't care. I crossed the distance, and he caught me like he was afraid I was a hallucination that would vanish if he held on too loosely. I don't care. I don't care. I thought you were dead for 12 years, and I am not leaving without you. Over Daniel's shoulder, through the open door, I saw a figure step out of the shadows of the hallway. Familiar, warm-faced, the kind of face that had smiled at me across 1,000 family dinners. Uncle Marcus. He didn't look surprised to see us. He looked, if anything, relieved. The way a man looks when a performance he's been running for 12 years is finally allowed to end.
Sophia, I always did wonder if you'd be the one to find your way here eventually. You have your father's stubbornness.
Gabriel moved between us instantly, weapon drawn, voice flat and lethal. Step away from him.
Marcus raised both hands, almost lazily, like a man who'd already resigned himself to an ending he'd seen coming for years. I'm not armed, Mr. Cross. I've spent 12 years keeping that boy alive when I could have made a very different choice. That has to count for something.
You stole 12 years from him, from all of us.
I gave him 12 years he wouldn't have had otherwise. His voice sharpened, the warmth finally cracking to show what had always been underneath. Your father was going to hand him a company built on debts I spent decades quietly covering. The moment Daniel started asking real questions, I had two choices: disappear the evidence or disappear the boy who'd find it. I chose the version where he lived.
You call this living? Hiding him from his own family for 12 years?
I call it a mercy you're too young and too angry to recognize right now.
You call it covering your own theft before it buried you. Gabriel's voice hadn't moved an inch, steady as a blade. Tens of millions, Reyes. That's not mercy. That's math.
Something in Marcus's composure finally slipped, the mask thin enough now to see the fear underneath the decades of careful performance.
It doesn't have to end badly. Daniel comes home. The money question quietly disappears into a settlement. and everyone gets to keep the parts of their life that still work. I'm not the villain in this story, Sophia. I'm the only reason there's still a story to finish.
You don't get to decide that. Not anymore. Daniel, still gripping my hand like he might lose me again if he let go, spoke for the first time since Marcus had appeared. His voice was steadier than I expected. 12 years of hiding had clearly taught him more than fear.
I've had 12 years to think about what I'd say to you if this day ever came, Marcus. Turns out it's simple. You don't get forgiveness for the choice you made. You get whatever the law decides, and I get to finally stop being the secret you built your whole second life on top of.
For a long moment, no one moved. Then, quietly, almost gently, Marcus's shoulders dropped. Not surrender exactly, but the particular exhaustion of a man who'd been performing a role for over a decade and no longer had the strength to hold the mask in place.
12 years is a long time to be tired, Daniel. I won't pretend I don't feel some relief that it's finally over.
Gabriel didn't lower the weapon until the private security team he'd called in from the road pulled into the drive 20 minutes later. Quiet, efficient. The kind of resolution that came from documents and evidence instead of violence. Marcus went with them without a fight, something almost like peace on his face, as if some part of him had been waiting 12 years for someone to finally make him stop.
The drive back to the city was nothing like the drive out. Daniel sat in the back seat, hand never quite leaving my shoulder, like he needed the physical proof that I was real every few minutes. Gabriel drove with one hand on the wheel, the other laced through mine on the console between us, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, the silence in the car felt like peace instead of fear. My father was waiting at the house when we arrived. The real house, not the penthouse, not a safe house, just home. He stood on the front steps like he'd been standing there the entire day, and when Daniel stepped out of the car, I watched 12 years of guilt and grief break across my father's face all at once. Dad. He didn't let Daniel finish. He crossed the distance in 3 strides and pulled his son into his arms like a man trying to make up for over a decade in a single embrace. I'm sorry, my father said, voice breaking in a way I'd never once heard in my entire life. I should have looked harder. I should have trusted my instincts about Marcus 12 years ago. I am so sorry, Daniel.
You're looking now, Daniel said quietly. That's what matters. That's all that ever mattered.
I stood back and let them have that moment. Gabriel's hand finding the small of my back the way it had 100 times before. Except this time, there was no threat to scan for, no room to catalog for exits. Just his hand resting there because he wanted it to be. What happens now? I asked him quietly. The job's done. Daniel's home. The threat's gone.
He turned me gently to face him, steel gray eyes steady in a way that had nothing to do with duty anymore. The job's done, he agreed. I'm not.
Meaning?
Meaning I'm not walking out that door tonight, Sophia. Not tomorrow either. I've spent 12 years defining myself by the person I failed to protect. I'd like to spend the next however many years defining myself by the person I get to love instead. If you'll let me.
I didn't answer with words this time either. I kissed him on my father's front steps, in the golden light of a sun that was finally, after everything, setting on something whole instead of something broken. Later that night, with Daniel asleep down the hall for the first time in his own family's house in 12 years, and my father sitting quietly with a glass of scotch he hadn't touched, just staring at the door like he was memorizing the fact that his son was really, truly home. I found Gabriel on the back porch, looking out at a view that had nothing dangerous left in it to watch for. No perimeter to check tonight?
A small, genuine smile, rare enough that I still felt lucky every time I earned one. Already checked. Everything's exactly where it should be.
I leaned into his side, and his arm came around me like it belonged there. Because it did. Rule number 1, I said softly. What's the new one, now that you don't sleep outside my door anymore?
He pressed a kiss to the top of my head, quiet and certain in a way that felt like every promise he'd never been able to say out loud until tonight. Rule number 1, I don't have to protect you from the world anymore. Just get to stand in it with you.
Thank you for staying with Sophia and Gabriel's story all the way to the end. If you loved this one, subscribe to Soul Chronicles. New stories drop every week, and this definitely won't be the last one that keeps you up past midnight.